All right, folks, welcome aboard the Steve Malzberg Show. It is Monday, and it is a busy news day, as you might expect. Lots of rulings, three important rulings from the Supreme Court, which we will get to. One going against the EPA, one favoring a method of the death penalty, and another agreement to revisit a affirmative action case, which is very interesting. So we'll talk about all that during the course of the show. Also, both fugitives now captured, one dead, one captured. So those two fugitives who escaped the Clinton Correctional Facility in New York State over 3 weeks ago, that is now all over. They're talking to the second man they captured yesterday. Supposedly he's confirming the role of the woman in all this. She was supposed to drive them to Mexico, if you could believe all that. And of course, she did not show up. Also, the fallout continues over the Supreme Court decision on gay marriage, where some presidential candidates, or prospective ones like Kasich of Ohio, says, hey, take a deep breath and live with it. And others like Mike Huckabee, Bobby Jindal, and Rick Santorum, to name a few, are saying, oh no, we're going to fight this. So all straight ahead, but we have a very special guest coming up, William Cohen, former Secretary of Defense. But first, I want us all to watch and listen to this.
A lot of hard work to do. There's some very tough issues, and I think we all look forward to getting down to the final effort here to see whether or not a deal is possible.
We're determined to do everything we can in order to be able to make this important milestone.
All right, and of course that deadline is coming on the 30th of June, but we've already heard that will be pushed back and not be met. And joining us now is William Cohen. He was Secretary of Defense from 1997 to 2001, former Republican Senator from Maine, Chairman and CEO of the Cohen Group, and author of Collision, a novel. And Mr. Secretary, welcome, sir.
Well, Steve, it's great to be with you again.
Well, great to talk to you again. It's been a long time. And first, before we get to the book, and we will, let me ask you about the talks going on with Iran. First of all, how are we sitting at a table with an adversary who continues to trash us, threaten us, call us this great Satan, says you're not going to inspect here, we're giving in on this, we're giving in on that, they have our prisoners, that's not a prerequisite for going on with these negotiations. I mean, how is this all happening in the first place?
Well, the desire was to find a way to prevent Iran from becoming a nuclear weapons state. It was thought that rather than go to war with Iran, it was better to see if an agreement couldn't be negotiated with them. I think we really negotiated away a very strong position by allowing Iran to continue to enrich uranium. And once you get to the level of saying it's okay to enrich, then it's just a question of how high and how many. And I think we're on the losing end of that particular discussion because we've conceded that. When in fact the Russians, believe it or not, had a better proposal a number of years ago, and they said, we'll do the enrichment in Russia and then we'll transfer the fuel back to Iran. And I think at that point we should have really linked hands and joined with Russia and said, we're with you on that, and we're against allowing Iran to go forward with enrichment. Now that that's been given away, the question then becomes, what do we do in terms of trying to control what clearly has been the ambition of the Iranians, and that is to develop a nuclear weapon. So is this a better deal than no deal? Well, if you say no deal, that means that Iran will continue to accelerate what it's been doing. Is there a way to prevent that? Well, this is the agreement that's supposed to retard it. It won't prevent it ultimately because it's like a 10-year, 15-year maximum agreement. And you can bet that Iran is going to at least try to cheat on the margins, which means that we have to have very vigilant and frequent inspections, not only at declared sites, but at sites that are undeclared but discovered, and they can be on military bases as well. Now, what's happening is Iran has been, in the past week or so, walking that back. They agreed back in April in Lausanne that there was a framework in which there were going to be full inspections everywhere there was a suspected site and declared site. And now you have the Ayatollah Khamenei, I should say, and he is rolling that back. So I think it's posturing. And if the administration were to give in or cave on those issues, it would be a mistake to go forward. Now, having said that, if we have a situation in which the 5+1 parties agree to this inspection regime and control regime, then I think it's going to be difficult for Congress, which has 60 days in which to review it, to reject it. And I say it's going to be difficult because if Congress is seen as rejecting an agreement which has been negotiated with 6 countries signing on, then it seems to me Congress could still say we're keeping our sanctions on, but the other countries would not. So that's not a happy outcome. So I think it's going to be important to say that we've had a framework here. We're going to insist on much more intrusive inspections. If that's not part of the deal, there should be no deal. And we go back to then intensifying the sanctions, not just keeping them in place, but intensifying them, because you can bet the Iranians are going to accelerate their program.
We've gotten enhanced warnings from the FBI and others about a possible terror attack here over the July 4th weekend, because it coincides with Ramadan. You know, when you left your position in 2001, could you ever have I mean, well, let me ask you, where are we compared to there? How much more dangerous or how much more vulnerable are we as a nation today than we were in 2001, or not so?
Well, it's hard to quantify it. We're safer than we were before 9/11, but we're not safe. And that's because the technology continues to expand, and terrorism has become democratized. Many people across the globe now have access to information which allows them to be able to put together a very destructive means of carrying out their terrorist plans. So we're better at detecting than we were in the past. We're much more focused in integrating and sharing the information that we have, but we're still vulnerable, and we'll continue to be vulnerable as long as groups can operate either on the margins or covertly to build these kind of campaigns of terror.
Tell me about Collision, your book.
Collision is about asteroid mining. June 30th is Asteroid Awareness Day, and NASA has been very much involved in trying to alert the world, and we have many other countries joining in this now, that we have asteroids that are out there by the thousands. We have some that are planet killers as such, big enough to destroy the planet, or life on the planet, and there are some that are city busters. And we saw some examples of this just a couple of years ago over Russia. There was a very small asteroid, about 56 feet in diameter, that came roaring over parts of Russia at about 35,000 miles an hour.
Yeah, that was quite a crater it created.
But we didn't see it, and that's the problem. If we can see the asteroids coming far enough in advance, we can deflect them. If we can't see them coming, then we're at risk. So this is about asteroid mining, because we, as a country, along with others, are trying to get in the business of mining asteroids for their minerals. So is the private sector. So you have private enterprise that also wants to mine the asteroid. How do you do that? You have to move it into a sublunar orbit. When you start moving asteroids around, can you then possibly put them through what they call a gravitational keyhole and then put them on a collision path with Earth? So these are some of the issues involved, and I thought I'd take the science and also try to make it a bit more entertaining in the telling of this. But you can go to NASA's website, and you can see every day we're discovering about 200 every month.
So this is real, and the possibilities are all real, but you're putting it into a novel. That is a very unique proposition, and I can't wait to read it. Now let me just ask you real quick here. Power grid, an EMP attack. We got a minute left. How vulnerable are we, and what's the likelihood that Iran or someone gets their hands on a small nuke and takes our grid down?
It's possible, and whether it's likely to happen soon or not remains to be seen. But taking down the power grid, you don't need necessarily an EMP to do it. You can do it through cyber attacks. And that's the real threat coming up as well. I mean, I've always been concerned about the nuclear threat. My last novel is called Blink of an Eye, about a nuclear bomb destroying an American city. And so I've been concerned about these issues, but now we have to look at cyber attacks being able to shut down our power grid, which you have to remember is in the private sector's hands, not the government's.
And we're vulnerable.
And we're vulnerable.
Yeah, all right. Mr. Secretary, great to talk to you. I hope you'll come back.
Great. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. William Cohen, ladies and gentlemen. The book Collision, a novel, very exciting stuff. We're coming back with Bill Donahue of the Catholic League. Don't go away.